Move that Mustang right now. The woman in the red HOA jacket stood in the middle of my driveway like she owned the place. Her finger pointed straight at my car while her teenage son stood behind her, staring at the black Mustang with a smile that made me uncomfortable. Jason has wanted this model for years, she said. You don't even drive it every day. Sell it to us before the neighborhood parade next month? I looked at her for a second, waiting for the joke. Then I realized she was serious. It's not for sale, I replied and turned back toward my garage. Her face changed instantly. You must be new here, she said. I'm Karen, HOA board member. Around here we help our neighbors. I locked the garage and smiled politely. And around here I keep my car. Her son's smile disappeared. Karen stepped closer. You parked it outside all week just to show off? My son deserves a chance to own something nice too. I almost laughed. It belongs to me. That's the only thing that matters. For a moment she said nothing. Then she looked directly at the Mustang and quietly said, We'll see about that. The next morning, a bright orange notice was stuck to my front door. Violation notice. According to the letter, my Mustang was breaking rules because luxury sports vehicles create visual imbalance in the community. I read the sentence 3 times. The neighborhood had 2 Corvettes, a Porsche, and a lifted truck worth more than my house payment. But somehow my Mustang was the problem. I walked across the street to ask one of my neighbors if this rule was new. He looked at the paper and his eyes widened. That's strange, he said quietly. I've lived here 11 years. I've never heard of that rule. Then he lowered his voice even more. Karen's son was asking about your car last week. He told people his mom always gets him what he wants. That night I checked the HOA website. There was no rule about sports cars. No rule about luxury vehicles. Nothing. The violation was fake. I was still holding my phone when headlights swept across my living room window. A tow truck had just stopped in front of my house, and Karen was standing beside it with her arms folded and a satisfied smile on her face. Take the Mustang, she told the driver. The driver looked at the car. Then he looked at me standing in my doorway. Sir, he asked carefully, is this your vehicle? Yes, he nodded slowly. Karen stepped between us. Not for long. Then she pulled out a folder and handed him paperwork. The driver's expression changed immediately. He looked back at me. Sir, according to these documents, this vehicle belongs to the police department. For the first time all day, I looked genuinely surprised, because I had never seen those papers before either. The tow truck driver held the papers in his hand and looked from Karen to me and back again. Sir, if this paperwork is real, I can't touch the car until I confirm ownership. Karen crossed her arms. You don't need to confirm anything. The police department owns it and wants it removed. The driver frowned. Then why am I getting the call? From an HOA board member and not the department itself? For the first time, Karen looked annoyed. Because I have connections. The driver didn't move. I stepped closer and looked at the papers. The documents carried official logos and stamps, but something felt wrong immediately. The VENG number on the page was missing 2 digits. Karen noticed me reading. Don't waste your time, she said. By tomorrow morning that car will be gone. Her son was already recording the scene with his phone, smiling as if the Mustang was being handed to him as a birthday gift. Then my phone rang. The screen showed a name that made me stop for a second. I answered. Hey, Tom. The voice on the other side sounded calm. I got your message. Is everything okay with the car? Before I could answer, Karen suddenly spoke loudly enough for the phone to hear. Tell whoever that is the vehicle is now under police property review. There was silence for 2 seconds. Then the voice replied, Police property review? Yes, Karen shouted. And who exactly are you? The man on the phone laughed once. A friend of the owner. Karen rolled her eyes. Well, your friend is about to lose his Mustang. Another pause followed. Then the man asked one simple question. Can you read the badge number printed on those papers for me? Karen looked down. Her confidence disappeared for the first time. The number was incomplete. The tow truck driver saw it too. Ma'am, he said carefully, these forms don't look official. Karen immediately pointed at me. He's trying to trick everyone. He probably made fake documents himself. I almost answered, but the sound of approaching sirens cut me off. 2 police vehicles turned into the street. Karen smiled again. Perfect timing. Her son grinned beside her. I told you Mom would handle it. The patrol cars stopped near the driveway. 2 officers stepped out. Karen walked toward them before they could even speak. Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man has a vehicle belonging to the department and he's refusing to cooperate. One officer looked at the Mustang. Then he looked at me. His expression changed instantly. He removed his sunglasses. Wait. He took another step toward the car. Is this Chief Reynolds' Mustang? The entire street went quiet. Karen's smile disappeared. Chief Reynolds? She asked. The officer nodded slowly. The police chief drives this car every year in the city veterans parade. Karen looked at me, then at the car, then back at me again. Her face turned pale because she had just spent 20 minutes trying to tow the police chief's Mustang from the police chief's own driveway. Karen stared at me as if the ground had disappeared under her feet. No, that's impossible, she said. The police chief doesn't live here. One of the officers looked at her. He moved in 3 months ago. Her eyes snapped back toward me. You never said you were the police chief. I shrugged. You never asked. The tow truck driver quietly folded the fake papers and handed them to one of the officers. These documents looked strange from the start. The officer glanced at them and his expression hardened. These aren't department forms. Karen immediately pointed at me. He made them. He had to. The officer shook his head. Ma'am, he called us because someone was trying to tow his car from his own property. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then another voice came from behind the officers. Mom! Her son looked nervous for the first time all night. Karen turned toward him. What? The boy hesitated. Then he spoke quietly. I may have printed those papers. Everyone froze. Karen spun around. What did you just say? I found templates online, he admitted. You said we only needed the tow company to believe them for a few minutes. The entire street went silent. Several neighbors had walked outside during the commotion and were now standing on their lawns, watching everything unfold. Karen's face lost all color. Jason stopped talking, but it was too late. The officers exchanged looks. One officer carefully asked, Are you saying fake police documents were created to take this vehicle? Jason lowered his head. Karen stepped forward quickly. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? The officer repeated. You told the tow company the vehicle belonged to the department. Karen tried again. I was only trying to enforce HOA rules. I held up the violation notice from my pocket. The same HOA rule that doesn't exist? The officer read the paper and looked confused. There is no city rule against Mustangs. A neighbor across the street raised his hand. Officer, she gave my wife a warning last year because our flowers were the wrong color. Another neighbor joined in. And she threatened to fine me because my grandson's bike stayed outside for 20 minutes. Suddenly, people were talking from every direction. Stories poured out. Warnings. Threats. Fake violations. Arguments. Karen looked around and realized something terrible. For years, people had stayed quiet. Tonight, they weren't staying quiet anymore. Then one officer received a call through his radio. He listened for a few seconds before looking directly at Karen. The HOA president says he never approved this violation notice. Karen's eyes widened. Because there was only one person on the HOA board who could have created it herself. And everyone standing there already knew exactly who that person was. Karen looked around the street and realized the situation was slipping away from her. This is ridiculous, she snapped. Everyone here knows I've only been protecting property values. One of the neighbors laughed. Property values? You tried to steal a car for your son. Her son immediately looked down at the ground. The officers continued examining the fake paperwork while another patrol car arrived. Karen took a step toward me. If you had simply sold us the Mustang, none of this would have happened. The entire street went silent again. One officer slowly turned toward her. Ma'am, did you just admit this started because you wanted his car? Karen knew immediately she had made a mistake. That's not what I meant, but it was too late. Jason finally spoke again. Mom told me the HOA could force him to give it up if enough violations were issued. Karen closed her eyes. Jason stopped talking, but he kept going. She said nobody says no to the HOA. Several neighbors exchanged shocked looks. The officers carefully collected the fake notice, the false police paperwork, and statements from witnesses. Then one officer looked at Karen. Ma'am, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding fraudulent documents and attempted unlawful towing. Her face turned white. You can't arrest an HOA board member, the officer answered calmly. Being on an HOA board doesn't put anyone above the law. As the officers escorted her toward the patrol car, she turned toward the crowd expecting support. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The same neighbors she had pushed around for years simply watched in silence. Then an older veteran from 2 houses down finally broke the quiet. You spent years acting like this neighborhood belonged to you. He pointed toward my driveway. But some things can't be taken with threats. Karen lowered her head and entered the patrol car. Her son stood alone on the sidewalk, staring at the Mustang that had caused all of it. The next week, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Karen resigned from the board. 2 other members stepped down. Shortly after, questions started coming about old violations and missing records. New elections were held. The fake rules disappeared overnight. The strange fines stopped. For the first time in years, people actually smiled during neighborhood meetings. A few days later, I was washing the Mustang when Jason quietly walked up my driveway. I wanted to say I'm sorry, he said. I nodded. It wasn't really about the car, was it? He shook his head. No. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at the Mustang one last time. My mom always told me powerful people get whatever they want. I closed the garage door and looked back at him. Real power isn't taking things from people. He nodded slowly. Then he walked home. A month later, the city veterans parade rolled through town. One of them shouted, "Nice car, Chief." I smiled and waved back. Because the Mustang was never the real story. The real story was much simpler. Some people think a title gives them power over others, until they meet someone who doesn't need to remind anyone who they are. And sometimes the strongest words in a neighborhood are the easiest ones to say. No, this is my home. And this time, everyone heard it. The Mustang led the line just like it had every year before. As I drove past the neighborhood entrance, I noticed dozens of residents standing and waving flags.